streaming of protoplasm in unicellular organisms like amoeba is also a simple form of movement. What are autotrophs? Those organisms which are capable of synthesizing their own food. These macrophages and leukocytes in a body, or the WBCs in a body, they actually exhibit amoeboid movement. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on chapter 20, that is Locomotion and Movement. I'm Dr. Divya, Biology Faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So we all know that locomotion and movement is very important, right? Because we need to move from one place to another. For that, locomotion is very important. And locomotion and movement, they go hand in hand, because if we need to locate ourselves or move ourselves from one place to another, then movement is very important here. So in this particular session of this chapter, we shall discuss about how exactly locomotion and movement occurs and what are the different muscles that actually participate in the locomotion and the movement, and why is this locomotion and movement is necessary. We shall look into all that. So talking about locomotion and movement. So animals and plants exhibit a wide range of movement. So here you need to know the difference. So what did I say? Animals and plants exhibit a wide range of movement. I use the word wide range of movement. Did I say here animals and plants exhibit locomotion? No, because for plants I cannot use the word locomotion, because plants cannot move from one place to another. But movement will occur in plants where they are standing, where they are growing, they can sway because of the winds. And not just that, the curling of the leaves and opening of the leaves, all that is nothing but movements that occur in the plant. So therefore, both plants and animals exhibit a wide range of movement. And the streaming of protoplasm in unicellular organisms like amoeba is also a simple form of movement. So amoeba, it is a unicellular organism, and this particular organism, inside it has a protoplasmic content which consists of the nucleus, the food vacuole and all that. So these protoplasmic content inside the amoeba also tend to move, and this is a kind of a simple movement. Now these you cannot use again here amoeba locomotes. That is true. Amoeba can move using its pseudopodia or the false feet. It can move from one place to another place. That is true. But can the protoplasm inside the amoeba locomote? No, right? Only movement will occur inside. But the protoplasm cannot leave the body of the amoeba and go somewhere else, right? So that is the difference between locomotion and movement. And here talking about movement of cilia. The movement of cilia help in the locomotion of, say for example, paramecium, or the movement of flagella. So the movement of flagella helps in the locomotion of euglena. So now you might have understood the difference. When the cilia are moving in a rhythmic manner, it will help in the forward movement of the particular organism, say for example paramecium, wherein the movement of the cilia is helping the paramecium to move from one place to another place. That is the difference between the locomotion and the movement. So similarly, flagella, as we see in euglena for example, and tentacles. So we have octopus. Octopus, they have tentacles, right? So their tentacles, if they move their tentacles, then only they can locomote from one place to another place in the ocean, right? That is the difference between locomotion and movement here. And human beings, we also can move, right? We can move our limbs, we can move our jaws, eyelid, tongue, etc. Limbs, be it the limbs, that is the hand or the leg. So I'm making actions now. I'm moving my hand, but am I locomoting? No, I'm not locomoting. But I am making movement now, and I'm moving my legs, and I'm moving from one place here in front of you to another place. That is locomoting, right? So therefore, we exhibit movement through our hands. And I'm talking. When I'm talking, my jaws are moving, my tongue is moving. So all that is nothing but motion. And not just that, my eyelids are closing and opening according to the intensity of the light. So all that is nothing but the movement that we see. So, therefore, human beings, we also can move our limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. And some of the movements result in change in place or location. That is true. But as we say, the movement of limbs can help in change in position. Say, will the movement of my hands change my position? No, I'm moving my hand, but I'm just standing here itself, right? But the movement of my limbs, that is my legs, will help me to change location. I'm moving, right? I'm moving from one corner to another corner now. So similarly, flagella. The movement of flagella will help in locomotion. So that is about some of the movements result in changes of place or location. And such voluntary movements are called as locomotion. This is voluntary because voluntary means it is according to my will. Am I changing place simply? No, right? If I want, I can stand still. If I want to move, then only I can move. So therefore, it is according to my will. So therefore, this particular voluntary action is called as the locomotion. So now you have understood what exactly is the difference between locomotion and movement. So we shall move further and study the different locomotion. What are the different? So we understood what are the different types of movements that we can see. Now we shall see what are the different types of locomotions that we can find. So walking, then running, climbing, flying, swimming, all are some of the locomotory forms. Why are they locomotory forms? Because of this particular locomotion or the movement, you're able to change your position from one place to another, right? Even when you swim also, you can reach a particular destination. By running, you can reach a particular destination. By climbing, you can reach a particular destination. So that is all nothing but locomotory movements here. For all these locomotory movements, there are certain locomotory structures, and these locomotory structures, they do not be different from those affecting other types of movement. So for example, we'll take an example here. In paramecium, the cilia helps in the movement of food through cytopharynx and also in locomotion. So what happens here? We know that paramecium, as the paramecium cilia. So the paramecium has somewhat like a small groove-like structure, right? Through that groove, actually, the food enters into the paramecium. Now, how will the food enter into the paramecium? It is because of the movement of the cilia. So, when the cilia moves, whatever food particles are present around the paramecium, that will get swiped inside the paramecium because of the movement of the cilia like this. And not just that, the movement of the cilia, it's just like rowing a boat. Just like that, the movement of the cilia will help the paramecium to move from one place to another. Therefore, the locomotory organs can perform different functions without affecting the locomotion. That is what they meant here, taking the example of paramecium. And say for example, we have hydra. So hydra, they can use their tentacles for capturing its prey, and also they can use them for locomotion. So hydra, it is a water dwelling organism which has tentacles. So that tentacles help in movement of the hydra from one area to another. Not just that, for capturing the prey and feeding onto the prey also, these tentacles will help. So the tentacles are performing two functions here without affecting either of the function. So that is the important factor of the locomotory structures in most of the organisms. And we use limbs in our body for changes in the body posture and locomotion. That is true, right? So I use my limbs, I'm using my limbs, I'm moving my limbs. So that movement will help me to move from one place to another. Not just that, I'm also moving my hands and legs at the same time. So therefore, these are also, so each of the locomotory organ does not interrupt with the function, other function of the same locomotory organ. So that is what they meant here. So next, talking about the why is locomotion very, very important? Why is movement important? So locomotion is very important in case of animals. Plants, They are autotrophs. What are autotrophs? Those organisms which are capable of synthesizing their own food. So plants, by making use of sunlight and photosynthesizing, they can synthesize their own food. So that is why they need not have to move from one place to another. And the plants have such capabilities that they can tolerate and withstand various environmental changes because they cannot locomote or they cannot move. So that is why God has created them in such a way for their survival. But animals or we human beings, we are not stagnant creatures, right? We tend to move from one place to another, and we are heterotrophs. We have to move. If I'm standing here the whole day in front of you in from the camera without moving or without locomoting, will I get food? Not possible, right? Even if the online delivery person comes here also, at least I have to go near him, no, to take the food. So that is why it's not possible. So to fetch a food, to seek shelter, for various purposes, locomotion is very, very important in the case of animals and human beings. So we shall see why locomotions are important for different purposes. One is food, especially the heterotrophs, that is, be it the omnivores or the carnivores, they need to move from one place, or the herbivores, they need to move from one place to another in search of food. And next is shelter. Wherever you are, you cannot stand there the whole day. I can't stand here the whole day in front of you. I need to go home. I need to go back to my shelter, right? And to reach my shelter, locomotion is important here. Not just that, in the case of animals, to protect themselves again from the predators, they need to find a shelter. They need to run and hide in a shelter. So for that also, locomotion is very, very important. Next, talking about to find a mate. That is to find a partner so that they can reproduce. Locomotion is very, very important. And next, for finding suitable breeding grounds. An animal cannot stay in that particular place and then think that it can breed an organism very well. What will happen? The predators will come and those young ones will fall prey to it. So that is why they'll have to move from one place to another or locomote from one place to another in search of a good shelter which is away from the predators. So that is why to find suitable breeding grounds also, locomotion is very, very important. Next is to find favorable climatic condition, especially the migratory birds. So we know about the migratory birds, right? So it is at a particular season, especially the Siberian cranes. In Siberia, when the winters are very, very cold, that is below the freezing temperature or -°C, these birds come to India's Rajasthan bird sanctuary and they settle there. So for them to fly from Siberia to Rajasthan's bird sanctuary, can they just flap their wings where they are sitting? Not possible, right? They need to locomote. So therefore, locomotion is very, very important in order to find a place having suitable, favorable conditions. And also, locomotion is important to escape from enemies or predators. So here I've taken a picture of a grizzly bear which is catching a fish. So the fish will have to locomote to escape from the predator. So therefore, locomotion is very, very important for all of these purposes. Next, talking about the types of movement. So there are different types of movement. So for example, our cells in a human body itself, they exhibit different types of movement. So what are the different types of movement? We shall see. First one is the amoeboid movement. So there are certain cells in our body. I have given the picture of amoeba here to make you understand how does the amoeba move. Amoeba, they have pseudopodia, right? So all the structures of amoeba is nothing but the false feet, that is a pseudopodia. So as and when the amoeba tries to move from one place to another, the pseudopodia stretches, relaxes, therefore allowing the amoeba to move from one area to another. And that is why amoeba, they do not have a particular shape. Similarly, there are certain cells in our human body which move within our body just like how amoeba moves. So that is why there are certain cells in the human body which exhibit amoeboid movement. And next, talking about ciliary movement. So what is cilia? As you can see here fine hair-like structures. So these hair-like structures that are surrounding the paramecium is nothing but cilia. How these cilia, they move in one particular direction backward like this, so that the cilia can move forward. Just like that, there are certain cells in our body, in the human body, which are capable of exhibiting ciliary movement. They move exactly like how the cilia helps to move the paramecium from one place to another. Next, talking about the muscular movement. So our whole body is made up of muscles, right? Be it the tongue, be it the heart, or whatever. So these muscles, the contraction and the relaxation of the muscles are the one that actually help in the movement. So all those processes you shall study in the coming sessions in detail. So therefore, so even now I'm moving my hand. Imagine if there was no muscles in my hand, would I have been able to move very freely? No, because muscle is the one that provides the elasticity nature that helps me to move. So when I'm stretching my hand, my muscles also, they will stretch, therefore helping in easy movement. So that is nothing but the muscular movement. So our whole body exhibits muscular movement. Apart from that, there are some cells in our body which exhibit amoeboid movement and ciliary movement. So we shall study about each of these movement one by one. So first, talking about the amoeboid kind of movement. So here there are some specialized cells in our body like macrophages, then leukocytes. Leukocytes are nothing but the WBCs, that is the white blood cells, right? And macrophages are some of the cells in a body that are capable of engulfing or feeding onto foreign substances, therefore protecting a body from harmful infection. So these macrophages and leukocytes in a body, or the WBCs in a body, they actually exhibit amoeboid movement. So as you can see, I have taken the example of macrophages as well as leukocytes. So they exhibit amoeboid movement, wherein they can move towards the target organism, whichever foreign body is entering into a body, and they can engulf them, so that protecting a body against infections. So it is affected by pseudopodia. So what is that? These also have pseudopodia-like structures, just like how amoeba exhibits movement using pseudopodia. Just like that, these cells also exhibit movement. So by the streaming of protoplasm as in amoeba. So as and when the pseudopodia stretches, inside the protoplasm also moves and it takes the shape of the organism. So that is why these macrophages and leukocytes also do not have a particular shape, because they exhibit this amoeboid kind of a movement. And cytoskeletal elements like microfilaments are also involved in amoeboid movement. So this is about the amoeboid movement. So next, talking about the ciliary movement. So I told you you have studied about this in digestion process, right? Respiration process. Our esophagus, our trachea all have cilia, or fine hair-like structures or hair-like projections which protect our body. Because say for example, when we breathe, what happens? Do you think only the pure air enters into through our nostrils and then reaches our lungs? No. In the air, all sorts of dust particles, all sorts of organisms will be there. So they will also enter. So first part of filtration would have taken place in our nose. And what about the other particles which have not been filtered? In a trachea, what happens is there are small hair-like structures that are present, which traps these organisms or the dust particles that we have taken in through the air, and it will allow only the pure air to reach the lungs, therefore preventing the unwanted material from reaching the lungs and harming a respiratory system. So that is nothing but a ciliary movement here. So ciliary movement occurs in most of our internal tubular organs, which is lined by ciliated epithelium. Not just that, even in females, the uterus. So the uterus has a fallopian tube. It is through the fallopian tube the matured egg or the ovum, it actually travels. So if the matured egg or ovum has to travel from the ovary through the fallopian tube, there also cilia will be present, which will move in one particular direction, pushing the egg forward through the particular fallopian tube. So this is the fallopian tube. Have the ovary. So this kind of movement is also a ciliary movement. So the coordinated movement of cilia in the trachea helps us in removing dust particles and also some of the foreign substances that we have inhaled along with the atmospheric air. This is one example for ciliary movement. As you can see, our trachea, this portion that is there, which is the trachea, they have just expanded and shown it. As you can see, inside the trachea, inside the wall of the trachea, you can see fine hair-like structures, right? So these are nothing but cilia. These fine hair-like structures are cilia. So when we take in air, inside that tube-like structure, the cilia will be present. That cilia will actually trap the particulates, the dust particles, whatnot is there in the air, it will trap it, therefore allowing only pure air to pass through a lung. So that is one kind of ciliary movement exhibited by the trachea. Next, I told you the passage of ova. So passage of ova means ova will be produced in the ovary. So this ova, which is produced in the ovary, has to travel through the fallopian tube, reach the uterus and embed itself in the uterus because the baby grows in the uterus there. So here what should happen? If this movement has to occur, then it is a ciliary movement occurring. So passage of ova through the female reproductive tract is also facilitated by the ciliary movement. So therefore, we understood macrophages and leukocytes, they exhibit amoeboid movement in human body, and ciliary movement is also seen in human body by taking we have taken the example of the ciliary movement in trachea and the ciliary movement in the fallopian tube of the female reproductive system. So this was about the ciliary movement. Next, talking about the muscular movement. So the movement of our limbs, jaws, tongue, etc. require muscular movement. I am talking. Imagine if there was no muscle in my tongue, I would have not been able to talk like this, right? So therefore, and while talking, my jaws are also moving, my limbs are moving, I'm making action. All these are nothing but the muscular movement. So the contractile property. So all this we shall study in the coming sessions in detail, how exactly the muscle contraction, all that occurs, the sliding movement of the muscles will occur which help in movement and locomotion, all that we shall study later in the coming sessions. So the contractile property of the muscles are effectively, what is contractile? The stretching property of the muscles are effectively used for locomotion and other movements by human beings, and not just that, this muscular movement are also used by majority of the multicellular organisms, that is not just humans, even all the other multicellular organisms or the higher animals, they also use this muscular movements. And locomotion requires a perfect coordinated activity of muscular, skeletal and neural system. That is true, right? Because when I'm moving, my bones are also moving, right? And the bones move, along with that the muscles move, because it is to the bones, the muscles that are attached. And not just that, if I need to move my hand, then the neural system also should come to function. That is, some message has to be sent to my brain saying that allow the contraction of the muscles, allow the movement of the skeletal muscles properly. So that therefore, so it is a coordinated activity between the muscular, skeletal and the neural system. So this was about this particular session wherein we understood the difference between movement and locomotion, and we understood why movement is important and why locomotion is very, very important, and also we understood the different types of movement that such as the amoeboid movement, the ciliary movement and the muscular movement, and also we studied using various examples. So this was about this particular session. In the coming session we shall study in detail exactly what are the different types of muscles and how these muscles exhibit movement. We shall study in the coming session. So we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.